I gave you a copy of it. It's this. You can have mine. Yes, please. Okay, moving along. Next on the agenda is to raise the floodplain drilling permit rates. What? We were going to raise.
I'm going to make a motion that we table that until our attorney gives us some information on that. We'll table that until our next meeting.
Okay, we'll do that. And the next one also, the drilling company is taking responsibility for damage to property owners.
And also make a motion we table that for our attorney advice.
Okay. So we're going to table. Next on the agenda is Jim Fostor and Joyce Huff. Did you want to speak or?
Well, my questions were for the FEMA director.
Okay.
When, do you know when Mr. Sneed is coming?
He's called me yesterday and he's not coming today.
But has he been rescheduled?
The, hopefully the 22nd of May.
Okay.
No, we're going to have executive session after lunch.
Madam Chairman,
Okay.
I will speak in opposition of EQT's letter to requesting rescission of the permit. I am an upstream landowner. I represent the city, the upstream landowner, and all of us will be affected by filling in of the floodplain. And they talk about they didn't collide this. I have 17 different violations of the floodplain ordinance. And I asked you at a previous meeting, was the floodplain ordinance a legal document? And was it enforceable? And the answer was yes. And we have a company here that's coming in and asking you to break a law that you have signed off on, and it is in violation. The application, the Smith Land Surveying made on the permit application said Grove Summers Road. That's a 10-mile road. There was no GPS locations on that map. Listed the cost of this preparing this site at $44,000. That won't even buy the diesel fuel. And then they come and then they're asking you to break your ordinance on this. And when you break the ordinance on this, this county suffers and suffers greatly. And now I would ask the attorney to look at Title 44, Part 60, which is entitled Emergency Management and Assistance. There was no public hearing on this. Floodplain manager did not go and view the property, nor was anyone in the community consulted about this property. I have photographed evidence concerning the flood of 2003 on this property and the adjacent properties upstream. So And I question, are there any legalities in a previous well that was drilled and the floodplain was filled? And equitable land people was well aware that this was in the floodplain. And he told, and the equitable landman made the statement that he wasn't there to be confronted. So they completely ignored the community and the property owners to pursue the drilling and construction of this well pad.
We do have an invitation for a hearing, correct, on May the 22nd. That's still standing,
Correct.
that you can hear both sides for this appeal of theirs for the
Yes.
permit.
That is correct.
And you still intend to have that appeal hearing on the 22nd, do
Yes.
you not?
Yes.
And if there's something other than that has appeared, then we'll give you a call. But in response to your response, Jim, I believe you talked to Kevin Sneed and he approved it. Kevin Sneed approved that.
Well, that's who they called and talked to. Then he sent us that letter that we filled out and I signed.
And Kevin's going to investigate more into it.
Say again?
Kevin's investigating more into it. He hasn't heard from the FEMA personnel that's why he didn't come today. He didn't get his questions answered.
This is deeper than the floodplain ordinance of Doddridge County.
I think that's
West
why
Virginia.
he's dwelling on
This
it.
goes back to 1973 and I think 1969. And I know for a fact that under the 404D of the Clean Water Act, that they are in violation of filling in a wetlands and the floodplain. And why is it that the State Highway Department cannot dump one load of dirt by their directives into a floodplain? And when I go through this county cleaning out creeks and stuff and getting debris out to prevent flooding of residential areas, everything that we take out of the creek has to be removed from the floodplain, yet they are asking to fill in a floodplain. It makes no sense. They can argue all their legal mumbo they want to, but the citizens of this country have the right to be protected from overzealous drilling companies.
Ms. Williams, for the record, it was the FEMA director, Mr. Sneed, that contacted you, was it not? And he visited with you about irregularities and violations. There's more at stake here than just violations against our own county ordinance. There are other issues as well. And that is what Mr. Sneed is investigating and looking into. And I suggest that we leave this for the May 22nd hearing when all parties can state their side. And at that time, a decision can be reached.
Okay, thank you.
What time is the hearing? 4 o'clock, 4 p.m.
Where's the letter from Mr. Sneed to Mr. Evans? Where Mr. Sneed said it was okay?
There was no letter, he lost the letter. He sent him papers to sign.
Are any of the other well sites that have been permitted, are any of them going to be reviewed before activity on them continues by the assorted companies that are drilling in the county? Because if there's one violation and they're in the floodplain and the stuff hasn't been looked at, is there any way that a moratorium can be put on current drilling activity or upcoming drilling activity until those permits and those locations are investigated?
There was no other permit and a floodplain issued.
Of the 122 or whatever that were permitted or whatever the number none others? I mean, has
I mean, he
anybody
can speak.
investigated that? I'm just curious, and considering the fact the flood that we had at the end of March of this year far exceeded what went on in this county than the flood that occurred in 1985. You know,
Do you have anything to say, Joe? Do you have anything to say? Well, there was not an issue in the floodplain.
No.
This was the only one.
Yeah, it's the only one, the first one I deal with.
The right-of-ways for pipelines and the pipeline development through our floodplains and over our hills and down our valleys and stuff, are these being covered by floodplain permits also? It's I mean, it's an improvement of more than $1,000. So do they have to fill out floodplain?
I mean, you're asking the wrong person. Jerry's a floodplain person.
Well, it says on your,
I've never heard of
it
any.
says anything over $1,000 of improvement. Well, that would be an improvement of over $1,000. So is there anybody watching our floodplain whenever they go down through, put the line through the creek, and go up over top the other hill?
Good question.
they have to apply if they're crossing through a stream or it has anything involved with a stream. I think the state and federal regulations, when they apply for some of this permitting work, requires what they call a stream crossing permit. So whether or not anyone's checking that or not, that is something that's part of the permitting process. And I'm not sure if it's on the state level or on the federal level, but they do have to provide stream crossing permits.
I guess that's why we need to hire a floodplain coordinator. I went to school 3 days just on floodplain management, and they just gave me the job when I took over as commissioner, so I'm not the floodplain coordinator, I'm just working as a man, signing permits. I've never signed any that was in the flood zone for building permits or anything without checking them out.
I'm curious, now, how many permits have you received from, I know you do building permits also, right? So it could be like a house construction or a well pad construction, it's still construction, so it's still something that has to be permitted by the county first? In other words, how many, as an example, well, we know there's 133 existing wells, and now we need to find out how many even got a regular permit for construction, let alone the floodplain permit, if indeed it was in a floodplain area. So that raises a question to go back and look at whatever permits you have on file. In addition, I would assume that building something right along the side of a creek would be considered a floodplain. Am I on board with that that would be a floodplain? And yet we have Antero drawing water out of McElroy Creek and put a parking pad and they're